My name is Yolanda Sanders, and I am the Department Chair for Apparel, Events, and Hospitality Management at Iowa State University. It is my pleasure to bring to you the last artist talk for More Than Monoliths Season 2. And tonight we have uh, an artist who will be talking with our founder for the Buxton Initiative, Cameron Gray. So Cameron Gray is a Birmingham-born artist who focuses work on Blackness in America. He to decipher his own understanding of self. He believes that Blackness is a universal force, and he tries to reveal a small part of its glory through every object he creates. Artistic and social practice, he hopes to be a reminder to people of how we got here, with the intention to spark inspiration in Black futures. Gray founded the Buxton Initiative in 2020, which is an organization that centers Blackness in the realm of art, music, literature, and film. He was the recipient of the Iowa American Rescue Plan grant, an Iowa Arts and Cultural Resilience grant. This evening, originating from Birmingham, Alabama, also we have Erin LeAnn Mitchell, who is a practicing artist and muralist whose work has been featured in print and television and acquired by the Birmingham Museum of Art. Mitchell moved to Chicago in 2007 to pursue her passion for art at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where she received her Bachelor of Fine Arts in 2011. Her interest in teaching led Mitchell to Columbia College Chicago, where she graduated with her Master's of Arts Education in 2016. Mitchell continues to expand her work, teaching and making art, depicting the Black experience. Please help me welcome Cameron Gray and Erin LeAnn Mitchell.
Hey, Ann, you there?
I'm here.
Hey, how are you? Hey, how you
Hey.
doing? You doing all right?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. As you can see, I'm in Birmingham. I'm actually outside right now, which is very not where I would be in usually around this time of year. But it's like it feels great to be back home. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got back to Birmingham too.
I
Didn't you?
know. I just got back too, so it does feel good to be home. I feel like we're both like, home.
No, 100%, 100%. So before we get into this, I just want to let you know, like, so I saw your work. When did I see it? I saw it, I think 2018, 2017. My homie, I had come back into town, and a good friend of mine who was actually a part of this, he was like the first person that I interviewed, Daniel, put me on. I was like, who you been looking at as a late? I was like, some Birmingham artist that you really are digging right now. And he pulled up your work, and I was blown away by it, honestly. Like, I don't know, there's something really beautiful about seeing these, like, it's like painting, but it isn't painting at the same time. And it's like that weird um expressionist way of but then also cubist too. And like I like how it plays with all those different types of formats, but then also bringing it back into like the beauty of Black women, but then and also the beauty of black patchwork too, within your work, which I think is really really beautiful. But then also it's like rooted in this southern aspect of, you know, Black women making patchwork quilts and all that kind of stuff too. And so like I love how you're hitting and hitting, being able to hit all those different points just from like a couple of views that I saw on Instagram. Was mind blowing to me. And so I just wanted to thank you again for joining me for this conversation. But thank you for your work as well.
Thank you. No, it feels good to be here. I had heard of what you're doing with Monoliths, and like, when you hit me up about it, I was like, oh yeah, definitely, like that'd be really cool. I'd love to be a part of that. It sounds dope. I appreciate what you're doing for the community there and the community to tie, there in Birmingham, everybody together, because I feel like both need this. Like it's a situation that's not accessible there, or like isn't even really, at a degree that it should be and can be, but you're adding to it for sure and creating something that probably wasn't there is now. So I appreciate your work that you're doing and bringing more light to people who it's difficult to get light too.
Exactly. Like I think that was the main reason why like I knew that like I had to do the second season from here, because it's like I want to make sure I'm putting on as many people as possible. Like if I can use my own platform to catapult or to give, like you said, light to people in Birmingham that I think have been slept on for so long. It's just been an honor to be able to do that and to also support you guys. So I think the first question I want people to get to know you, and so like can you give everyone a little bit about your background and like where you from and kind of how you got started?
Okay, so I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. If you're from Birmingham, I went to the Alabama School of Fine Arts, which is an art like high school, middle school to high school in the city. It's an awesome place, and honestly, looking at where I've gotten so far, I think it definitely was a jewel and like something that really opened my eyes to what could be. So I like to shout Alabama School of Fine Arts out where I can, because like it needs to stay there. It's a special place. And also, I mean, after that, I went to the School of the Art Institute Chicago, and that's in Chicago, of course, Illinois. And I was there, got my bachelor in arts there, and was doing a lot of textile work. I was learning new techniques like screen printing and making like yardage fabrics, and sewing, and all these things were like coming together, and I was kind of building skill in that. And then for a while, I was just in Chicago and just kind of living a Chicago life and evolving myself and like from my style and becoming more expressive in how I present myself and how I want to be presented. So that was like a time of growth. And then I went to Columbia College, and I was like, well, I mean, gotta eat. And so I'm like, I want to do something that's like still related to art that can be serving and still serve me a degree. And like teaching was always kind of there. And like even my mom was telling me teaching, but I just wasn't ready just yet. So then it got to a point where I was like, okay, now I think it's time for me to do this and add the skill to my under my belt as well. Just add the skill set too. So I got certified to be a teacher. I was teaching in Chicago briefly, and then I was like, you know what, this is awesome, but this isn't feeding me in the way that I want to feed me. Like I see the importance in this, and especially my place in the school system, because there are very few Black teachers, and on top of that, like, Black women teachers. It's just, and the arts in itself were being taken away from schools in so many degrees. Like I was important to be there, but also just the system of public schools and how hard that is on teachers is a real thing. And so it's just kind of got to a point of like, I got to think of myself right now and take myself out of this position that's not serving me the way that I would like to serve myself. Like I can't do what I want to do because the system doesn't allow me to, because of all these factors that I don't have any control over. So it just made it difficult and kind of, and sometimes kind of like helpless, really. And so it was just kind of like, I know I want to make art, and I feel like I could reach more people and make more connections with not only students, but everyone else if I were just do what I want to and make the work that I want and like, I don't know, put it out into the world and see what happens. And so that's kind of honestly I just decided like, okay, after this year's teaching, I'm going to set off and like do this thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly how it's going to come together, but I just am going to take this leap of faith and really just follow my instincts of what I think will get me far where I'm trying to go. Yeah. So that's kind of how I ended up here. Yeah. Well, at this point, at this point
It should.
in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think you hit it a lot of that on the nose of like the understanding of like, because I have that same teaching bug, but then it's also like how's other ways that I can use that same bug that I have to also do it, but not do it within the system. Because again, like you're talking about, the system in itself is somewhat corrupt in itself. Of like,
it's not somewhat, it's definitely corrupt.
Yeah, 100%. So it's hard to truly be a part of that without being almost complicit to that system too. And so like I really commend you on understanding that and like seeing like, okay, maybe I need to pivot to see how can I still teach without actually having to actually be in that. Because like that is something that I don't think a lot of people talk about, is that confliction that you do that you have when you start to get into teaching or understanding what teaching is, which I think is which I think is quite beautiful. So can you tell me like, what was it? So we're gonna back up a little bit. So when was the first time that you found yourself like really art inclined and like really leaning into your work? Like, how old were you?
Ooh, I feel like I was maybe like 9 or 10, between like 9 and 12 years old, definitely before 12, but like I was at school and we had art like once a week, and that was my favorite class. I loved it. I love Tuesdays, because Tuesdays when we had art, I think the class may have been like 45 minutes, but it was just everything I waited for. And so outside of that, my mom put me in a few different like art camps. At one point, like I think I went to one like private art lesson, but I think it was just like way expensive. Fuck that. So like, she put me into different things because she knew that's really what I wanted to do. But I mean, it wasn't until like actually I went to high school that I had like dedicated time to be working on art. But I had always been very imaginative as a child. If I wasn't like painting things, I was just kind of making worlds in my head and then creating spaces that, I don't know, build play. There was just like, I always had these ideas, and I don't know, I wouldn't say visions or anything, but just being very creative in different ways. And I think it wasn't like, there was one situation, I got like a suitcase. I got gifted like some thrift suitcase, and my dad gave me paint to paint it. And it was the most basic stuff. It wasn't like amazing. It literally was just like 3 colors. It was yellow, red, and so I painted like the sides of the suitcase. But I remember very vividly being like, no, I want this to be this side, but this side has to be this side. So then I was thinking of composition. I was thinking of color there. I was like doing all this stuff, and it was 3 colors on an old suitcase. But I think this was around that time, that like 9, 10-ish. So I was like, oh, I want to like make things and be creative, and I don't know, make things pretty, just do like play with colors and different materials and stuff. I was interested in always doing things with my hands.
No, that's quite wonderful. So like what I'm hearing is that kind of support. Would you say that like that support has always been like, because I know, especially coming from a predominantly black family, it's difficult for people to actually see if like, I know both of our parents probably worried about like what like you want to do this art thing, but like what does that mean? Like how you gonna make fun? Exactly. And so like
eat off of that.
Exactly. So like was there a lot of pushback from like your folks as you got older, or did they kind of see the vision and like trust you?
No, I wouldn't say that there was. I definitely feel like I could sense concern, but there really wasn't pushback.
Yeah.
Like they were never against. They didn't tell me that I couldn't go to Chicago. They weren't like, no, you can't do that, because what sense would that make? Like they never knocked anything that I wanted to try. But I definitely sensed like, okay, so if you do this, then we need like this, like like how, what are you? They posed questions, but it wasn't any like stern, like no, like like what? But I'm sure they talked about me when I wasn't in the room, and they said, I don't know what you're gonna do with it, but we just gonna see. We're gonna pray and we're gonna see. I think that was the case. And clearly we're here now. So
we semi made it. Like
it was very clear. I very clearly knew what I was doing, even though I didn't know at the time. I knew, and it all came together. Everything has worked out. Mm-hmm. Everything has proven itself to be like why I ended up going to ASPA, why me going to Chicago working, like how it's gotten to this progression and all these things. I'm back and I'm still doing these things, and like who knew? I didn't but like like what if I hadn't done those things? Sometimes I wonder, because like you said, some people don't have that support. And so I'm very thankful that my parents did give me that support, because I don't know what I would have been doing if it weren't for this. It's hard for me to think of anything else that I would want to do or be as like, I don't know, as good at. I don't know, want to be as good at and want to improve in ways like this. So it's just kind of like, it just was meant to be. And that was just, they just allowed, they were just like, let's just let it happen because it's there. Like, let's let it be. She's clearly going in this direction.
Pretty like unabashedly. Like I think that's like one of the things that like, I don't know, me personally, and I love your little PC answer with concern. Like yeah.
I'm gonna say they were. I sensed there was a lot of concern, but they backed it. But they were like, "We gonna see. We don't see. We gonna see.
Yeah.
Because you say this, we gonna trust and see. We gonna pray, and we gonna believe." But I sensed it. And I was like, "It's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right."
I mean, like it's a hard. The life that we chose is a very hard life to choose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not one of those things of like. There is no direct pathway, right? Like you have those mentors that you're talking to on a regular basis about things that you want to achieve and things that you want to do, but there's never like that direct line to that goal, right?
Oh,
like
no.
we always had to figure that how to navigate that path, and I want to ask you, because I want to also give people a lens of how the struggle is. What is, because I know I can remember mine. What was like one moment of your growing up where you honestly thought about possibly quitting?
I mean, when the money don't add up,
yeah, exactly.
when the ends ain't meeting like you thought they would, you like, ooh, not that they don't meet, but it's just it's getting too close to comfort. It's like
exactly,
it's a little lower than I would like, and I don't know when it's gonna pull up. So sometimes like when it hits that, it's like, yo, like this is uncomfortable. But I also try and remind myself that, it's in those moments of like when you're uncomfortable that you're growing, like things are going to happen because you're being tested in some way. So you have to maintain your faith. You haven't gotten this far for no reason. Like you just have to maintain that. That's all you can do really, because if you just dwell in things not working out, then they won't. Like they just won't.
Exactly.
Because you're not thinking positively, like it's just that energy's not there to make it. And so like you just gotta keep going. In those times, that's when you're being tested. And I just remind myself that I'm like, it'll work out. It has worked out in the past. It will continue to work out, and I can't fester in that. I can only move forward.
Exactly.
So there are times where I'm just like, not that I think I didn't make the right decision. It's just kind of like, this is difficult. Like I'm not as comfortable as I would like to be, but I understand that a better day is coming. Like this is just one of those low points, and at any point in time, I know how I can pivot from this. Like what can I do? If I'm not making, then like I'm going to be teaching more somewhere. If I'm not teaching, I'm like lending my talents in some other way. Like what can I do? I can go lecture, I can do other things, I can be in organizations, I can work. Like there are other facets, and like I still want to be making work, definitely, but it's not like I would be completely out. Like I can always still work and be a part of the arts. It's just kind of like you need to know your backup plan.
For sure.
At the
And
end
be
of the day,
prepared
you
for those.
never know, huh?
Yeah, I say, and be prepared for it when you have to deploy.
And be prepared for it, and just know, like, sometimes you're gonna have to do some things that you don't want to do, but if it gets to where you want to go, then you just got to do it.
I mean, you got rent to pay. If it can, it can get you for that next month. Do what you got to do. It is what it is.
And maybe it's just that month that you need it. Maybe that was it. And the next month you back on your feet, and it was just you just had to go through that. Like that's just what it was.
Exactly.
But, you know, that's if you don't keep pushing, then you never know. You just got to do what you got to do. But luckily, I've sustained and I'm good. Like, you know, sometimes I'm not as comfortable as I would like to be, but I feel like anybody can say that about their job in any way.
Of course.
So like, it's just kind of like, I'm so, I feel so happy waking up, being able to do what I love the most, that it's just kind of like, if this is the life, like, if anything from the past 2 months that I've lived is the life that will continue to be on me traveling and doing work and meeting new people, then like, and I don't know, and my bankroll stays enough where I'm able to sustain and do all those things, I'm happy. I'm so happy. Like I couldn't ask more because I had a job, like I was getting paid every 2 weeks and I wasn't traveling like I've been traveling. I haven't seen the places I've seen since doing this. And it's just kind of like, you know, it's to a degree like, are you fulfilled? And not to say you should go broke trying to find that, but you know, it's just kind of, it evens out. It fills me to do this work, even though I'm not rolling in cash.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, ideally I would like, I'm not saying I'm not trying to, you know, I ain't gonna want to be, but it feels so much better not being in a situation where like I'm stressed or I'm like have to abide by these rules and things because I'm working in the system and can't make art or teach art or, you know, be around art in the way that I ideally would like to because all these other variables I have to, you know, I'm kind of, you know, complicit to working with. Like, it's just like, I have to abide by these things. I do things on my own terms, and I'm still able to reach students. I've talked to a number of teachers who said they've used me examples in their lesson plans. And it's just kind of like, I'm not in the school, but I'm still in the school. People are still learning about me in ways, and I think that that's awesome. Like, it speaks to the fact, like, I left teaching, but there are still teachers who talk about me and my work still is able to touch, like it's able to reach out and like, you know, students are able to find inspiration from it. And I'm people that like, oh, that's someone like, especially Black girls who are artists. Like for the longest, I didn't know any Black women artists. I only knew like my high school teacher, and he was one of the first Black male teachers I had in my whole, like, you know, school career. So it's just, you know, I feel like, and all just comes back to being like, there's a reason why I'm a full-time artist and I'm doing this, and everything's coming together for me, and I'm able to, you know, be a part of these amazing experiences and share them with people. Like, yeah, it means a lot.
No, I mean, I think that's huge. I think it's one of those things where we are almost giving back to these people that have supported us too, right? It's like you always like, I think one thing that always sticks with me is this notion of like, you get this idea of because I grew up in church, and the idea of the tithe, right? And the idea you're giving to then hopefully receive something back, but you're not intending that. All you're trying to do is just to put beautiful things and to give beautiful things into the world, and hopefully if they do come back, they come back. If they don't, at least you did something to actually help others or to propel other people's careers, which I think is really beautiful too.
I feel like it's dark in here. I'm gonna turn the light on like super
no
quickly.
you're good. I might have to do it my darn I might have to do it my darn stuff here. Hold on 1 second.
I'm like, the sun is going down, and it was a little higher when we started. Now it's getting dark.
Exactly. I had to turn mine on too. But but yeah, sorry folks for that little
little light change.
I mean, usually it stays pretty bright usually around this time here, but like I'm kind of surprised that it got a little darker earlier.
Because it might rain later, I think.
I hope not.
Because it was really windy earlier.
Now you have a point. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of where you're going right now with your work? Because I mean, you like in everything that I've seen, and like, what did you? Let me ask you this: who are your big? Let me start here. Who are your biggest inspirations right now that you've been looking at?
Um, I'd say just who I consistently turn to, I feel would be Faith Ringgold and Kerry James Marshall, or usually the two that for sure end up in that list. I can name some other ones, but those are the two consistent ones that like I always look to.
Your biggest wells, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you by chance see his I don't know if it came to Birmingham, but like he did a retrospective back in,
Oh
I
yeah,
want to
was it Mastery?
yeah. It was like New York, and it was in Chicago
Oh
for
yeah.
in like 2015 or something like that, 2016. Like
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of. I did see that. Mhm.
incredible work.
Incredible.
Absolutely.
Like I'd seen some of his work, but I don't think the large scale canvas work I had really seen. I've seen some sculptures and things connected to it, but they're huge. They're like, and if you see them like on your phone or just in a book, it just doesn't compare to seeing these things in person. They're huge, and then there are these like gorgeous like black figures that you can just dive in. The paint that he uses is very specific, and the detail in them all, like, it's everything really.
So you didn't see his because they got one at the Birmingham Museum of Art, of course.
Oh yeah, I've
Like
seen that one. That was later on, but as far as like a collection of his all together, like, and it wasn't just of like his more figurative work, it was also these more abstracted pieces that look kind of like what are those called? Like the ink blots. They kind of are reminiscent of those works. And then he has some works that's more like comic style related, like storyboard work. So it was a great collection. Like it was retrospective, I guess. I mean, but yeah, like to see all that together in one place is really nice, because I'd never seen that much of his work in one space before.
And how did you get into Faith?
Honestly, I think it was something that like probably like Tar Beach. That's been like the longest running, like it's like my favorite lesson plan to do with kids too. But her book, she's also a writer, and she's published children's books and whatnot. And so there's a book called Tar Beach that she did that also is accompanied like this quilt painting that she does, and she has a story that goes with it. But like that story, and then I heard about her work some growing up in school, and then learning more as I got older and like really started studying the work and artists and things like that. Her work always came back because I really appreciate her use of textile and painting, because that's basically what I was doing in college. If I wasn't printing on textile, I was using textile to make something and then painting. And wow. So she's just like a really obvious type of kind of, and she also went to France. From what I know, she has a French series of quilts that were inspired by her time in France, and I feel like it's just all like aligned with kind of like where I'm at and what I'm doing. Of course, she sews quilts, and I do patchwork in some of my pieces, and so yeah, just a Black woman artist again, another someone who I didn't know of. I don't know. Well, now of course there's way more Black women artists out there, but as far as like older Black women artists, as someone who's been before, I didn't know many of them, and I was learning, and I felt like she just kind of checked a lot of the boxes and interests that I had and was working with things. Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's beautiful. I think that actually lends perfectly into the next thing I want to ask you. It's like, how did you get into quilt work? Like, what was your fascination into that? Was it something that got passed down to you from your grandmother or something like that, or how did you get into it?
Well, my grandmother didn't teach me, but they did make quilts, and I always enjoyed the quilts they made. I mean, my great grandmother, she was a maker of many things. I mean, she made quilts. She made us like costumes at one point for Halloween, and she would make us like bags, like knapsack bags and stuff. She was just an extremely creative woman. And I was always inspired going to her house and seeing all these different things that she'd made. And like she'd do some embroidery and like, I don't know, she was always working with different, like she worked with textiles, which then she'd do paintings as well. And so it was also a lot of her and watching and wanting to do my own thing or like do something to a version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing, of course, Faith Ringgold's work, it's just kind of like, well, you know, I think it just kind of made sense for me to make quilts. I don't know. It just came kind of natural, and I liked how you're able to combine different types of fabrics. It's kind of like a mixed bag. Like especially if you think of like the quilts of G-Ben, G-Ben quilters, and they kind of use different patternings and the colors you can add, and like different color fields that you can make. I don't know. It's just all the while fascinating on top of like the history of quilts, specifically Southern history, Black history, you know, messages and whatnot, and then how that also is filtered in other ways, like with the Obama portrait of Michelle Obama and how that ties to that. Like all of these, it's just things that I enjoy and I like and I feel like resonate with me and speak to my being and where I'm from and who I am, and like it's just something that I like to implement in my work and like speak really imbibing the Southern heritage and Southern being. So I feel like it just came together in that way.
Do you still have any of her quilts actually that she made like from when you were younger?
Do I have quilts from my grandmother?
Yeah.
My grandmother actually made me like a baby quilt that I still have. Like that's So I still have some things where I'm like, it's super precious.
Yeah, for sure. Like do you find yourself going to it just to kind of somewhat center yourself to honor, almost like kind of remind you of the things that you're doing too as well?
Like to be all the way honest, when I said that, I'm thinking of it. I'm like, you know what? I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's like when I find it and I can like stumble on it, it's just kind of like, oh, like I remember looking at this when I was younger and like wanting to know how this was made and stuff. And like there's like a little bird on it, and I was like, how does she like knit this bird on here? And like I don't know, curious about it. I know when I was little, there was a time when I wanted to make clothes for my doll. I like asked my mom to help me like sew clothes, and I learned how to sew. She showed me like simple, like, you know, little stitch sews or whatever, but it's always been there to want to know about sewing and then, you know, creating from other things.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you after that. It was like I was curious about like one things that you've learned from like even looking back at her own work, because like you can try to people can teach you as much as they can, right? But like to actually to mimic or to do what she did is you can't really do that, you know what I mean? Like, and so like I don't know if you've ever like, again, well I guess you say you haven't looked at it, but like again, trying to figure out how your grandmother like saw or how she worked via her stitching, and the things that you could possibly learn from her stitching. You know what I mean?
For sure. Actually, I heard my mother was visiting her recently, and she told me that she had a sewing machine out, and I was like, and she had like a nice sewing machine. She had like a Brother sewing machine. I don't know, whoever's out there watching, if you sew or anything, you know, Brother's machine is a nice machine. So I don't have a brother. I just have a finger, which is like it might be basic. I don't want to call people with like fingers basic people, but I have the basic of basic fingers. But anyway, like, but Brothers is nice. That's what they use on like Project Runway and stuff like that as frame of reference. But anyways, I was like, she has this fancy sewing machine. I'm gonna go down there and use that sewing machine. Or I was like, I want that sewing machine. But I think it's funny that you say that, because I'm like, I should go there, especially since she has a fancy sewing machine now.
Hey, take advantage of it as long as you can, man.
Right. Or you can like, let me use that. Show me what you're doing on this fancy sewing machine right here. I'm gonna see this.
For sure, like, or even like, I could even see a beautiful like collaboration between you two too as well.
Oh yeah, like, that would be awesome.
The blending of you know old generation and new generation, and where those two things come together. One thing I do like as a person who's been looking at your work for quite a while, one question I've always wondered is, so in most of it, it seems like it's painted in most areas of it, but I also know that you are stitching onto it as well. How often how do you make that decision of what you want to be stitched and what needs to be painted in that conversation that you're having with yourself?
I think it really, the painting just kind of speaks it to what it should be most of the time. Like, it's like, it varies, honestly. Because like you said, there's some paintings that I have that are all paint, mainly. Like there's some collaged elements and some fabric elements, and then there are others that are 90% just fabric made with like this collage, like canvas figures or add-ons that are canvas or whatnot. So honestly, it just kind of like, when I get the vision of how the work looks, I go from there, and it kind of like speaks to itself as what it's gonna be. But even then, sometimes that changes. So I really can't give a definite answer as like how that works. It's just kind of like, I could see one thing and then turn around and be like, you know what though? Like, I feel like this would be better in the long run. Like, I don't know. I just like the effect of this, or I have the material to do this, and I really wanted to be trying something different or whatever. And so I'm going to push myself. It's really just varies altogether.
I got you. Let me ask you about your process, like in the aspect of like trying to figure out what you want to do, or trying to figure out a new painting. How do you go about doing that? Is there a research process, or is it kind of like it comes to you and then it's like, okay, straight to canvas, or how does that process work for you?
I feel like in most cases, my work kind of speak to each other and inspire each other. Right now, there's like a storyline that's forming, and to be honest, like I don't know the full story. It's kind of developing in front of your eyes as much as it is mine, because there's these elements that are coming together. And I guess I have an overall kind of story that's happening. It started with just this idea, or what is like Black women overcoming obstacles and breaking barriers, and like, setting standards. And then that happened, this was happening around the time of the Olympics, where all the situation was going down with, like, per usual, these Black women are being scrutinized, and, all these things as far as like what they're able to do if they're under code or whatnot, because of, I don't know, what like enhancements or things. Like we're talking about Shire Richardson, we're talking about Simone Biles, all these different, these things that kept coming up to them. And they're these amazing gifted athletes, but they're having to deal with this kind of like BS aftermath because they're so gifted, and they have to be put down some way or something. I don't know. So all of that, with all of that happening at the same time, I made that running piece, Hit the Ground Running, which is just like the top torso of this female body in this like sprinting forward motion. It was actually inspired by a photo of Olympic runner. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad. Her name is
Flojo.
Not Flojo. Actually, it's Flojo's like sister-in-law. I'm so upset that her name like is kind of slipping from me right now. I'll have to go back and look that up. I feel bad, but anyway, she was related to Flojo though. I think that was her sister-in-law.
Okay.
But also an Olympic runner. And so then I'm thinking like, the sprinting motion, still thinking of like Black women overcoming obstacles, breaking barriers, setting standards, the same thing that these Olympians are doing, the same things that Black women are doing in office, what they're doing across states in like, you know, places of office and this like just in general and creative senses in every like pocket of everything that's being diversified and you know, kind of progressing in what way majority a good amount of time Black women are leading that or in the front of that change. And so the sprinting motion has become a recurring thing. And so it's being, you know, applied in different ways in all of these works that I'm doing. And although it's sometimes these works, like there's not an exact running figure in them, it speaks to, you know, the feet or the presence or like the ability, something that flows into that. And that's why I think that like my work inspires the next, because it's part of this ongoing narrative that's building. And so that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No,
Like, that makes sense.
No, 100%. Like, I don't know, like there's so many like beautiful references of like bringing the Black lens within our art history too as well. Like a lot of the female forms in which I'm seeing within your work in particular you can see the reference to art history too as well, of like these like I there's a really beautiful reclining I forget what the work is called, but
nighttime is the right time, the reclining.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, like very, very reminiscent of like the Victorian, you know, paintings that you would see of the female nudes that they're laying down. But then there's also that I also love like McLean Thomas. There's a lot of that within that too, which I've always
another artist who actually I admire, McLean Thomas for sure.
Yeah, the stuff is absolute like, but then you also play with that too, with the abstraction of the fragmented body. So can you talk about that a little bit of like making that decision instead of like making a solid form and like having different segments that you're breaking down this body into shapes? How did you come across that type of way of representation of the female form?
I mean, like, because I'm not good at doing realistic. I don't know. Like I don't, and also to be honest, I have no interest in rendering a form realistically.
Okay.
I feel like I want to take myself and the audience into this other realm that isn't where we are right now. Not to say that I don't reference something, because you know you can clearly tell it's a person, but like it's not, you know, as we see each other. True. And so then that kind of takes you out of that. You start thinking in these other, like I said, like realms and this world that I'm taking you into that you can tell has connections to reality, but it's very much not so. Yeah. So you're kind of in this limbo of like, okay, so how does this relate in like real time, but where are we in this other, you know, universe that I'm bringing you to? But yeah, at the end of the day, like I'm not interested in rendering the figure realistically.
I understand. No, I mean, and that's a valid point. Like I think there's something really beautiful about that, and honestly, that is a very European way of thinking about the form too.
This is true. This is true. This is true.
Yeah, it is. So like I love that aspect because it does lend an eye to the African way of representation of, you know, these god figures in which they were doing, you know, over exaggeration of the lips or the eyes and making those bigger. But you're right that you see, you understand, you see what it's referencing, but that you're able to then see past that and then go deeper into the painting of like, what, you know, what is this lending an eye to? Like using these particular colors, what could that mean? And you do give us the opportunity to see more than just the figure itself of like, because these, I mean, they all of your female forms feel like other beings, to be honest with you, like almost like these holy creatures to some degree that you're somewhat documenting, but then also adding realness and reality to them too, which I've always loved you for your work about that. One thing I do want to talk about, so can we talk a little bit about your mural that you did at Santa Luis Obispo? Yeah. So what was the name of that? What was the name of the mural? In particular?
It was here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So can you give people a little bit about the work itself and talk a little bit about how you got to the final piece?
Yeah, so I did a mural for the St. Louis Obispo Museum of Art this past February, and St. Louis Obispo is in California, and just for like geographical reference, it's between San Francisco and LA, and it's on the coast, beautiful town. Like I said, I was there in February, and I did a mural on the exterior walls of the museum, and it pretty much covers, like, circles the whole museum too. The concept of mural came from this history of Calafia, who was an Amazon queen who ruled over the land that is known as California, and it's Calafia is known to like be part of California's origin, name, and like being. So I did not know about this before. When I was deciding what I was going to do on the walls, I was researching just, California history. I wanted to bring some type of Black history, something, very Black, all about that. So I'm like, what relates to this area, but also to the Black experience, like what was happening here. I had very limited knowledge of, kind of the history in California and Black people's history there, outside of kind of like civil rights rioting and LA riots and things of that. But that's not what I was interested in touching on at all. It didn't really resonate the way that I wanted it to, And so it was actually a friend who brought this Calafia to my attention. And then I started doing more research, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. I really like this. And it's this Black Amazonian woman. And it's honestly, it's not, if I have to be technical about this, the story is not it doesn't have a historical stamp to say yes, she indeed is the origin of the name California. There's a lot of theory in this, but also let's keep in mind this is a story about a Black woman ruling a land. Exactly. So that's not going the way history set up, especially turning to Black people, that don't usually filter through as facts, and this is something that's taught and everyone knows. So I wanted to unearth this kind of this legend. I don't know. I don't even want to call it a tale. I don't want to make it sound like it's fake, because it very well could be a real thing, and it's a real thing. I see it as a real thing because it was first part of this book that was written in 1519 or something like that by a Spanish inquisitor or someone, who came over and had these tales of this woman tribe doing these things. And we already know the Dahomey tribe of women warriors. So this is not, a really far-fetched thing to consider happening. Sure. But the fact of the matter is, in history books, this doesn't exist. So whatever. I wanted to bring it up and be like, no, she was here. This is a real thing. Y'all need to pay more attention to it than it really is. And I'd done some history just to see if she had been depicted anywhere in California, and she is in places, but those depictions of her do not resonate to me as a Black woman. She looks like she's more she looks more of Mexican descent, and I mean, I guess that would make sense, right? But I don't get a sense of a Black woman, and she's supposed to be this Black woman. Or if I know actually Disney had an exhibition of her. As a matter of fact, Whoopi Goldberg narrated it, and it was up for it was up for a few years, but of course it came down kind of swift. And so, but it was a brief exhibition, and Whoopi Goldberg narrated it, but it's no more. And I mean, I guess that also speaks to the story of it all, kind of like, all right,
Sure.
so what does that mean?
Yeah.
So is this something that we need to be talking about, or what? And it definitely is. And so that just became the theme and the context as to what I designed on the walls. And it also still filtered into my actual, like, you know, painting practice and what I was thinking about as far as Black women, you know, setting standards, crossing barriers, doing all these things. And then adding this, like, let's say this ancestor, this historical figure in Black history that isn't known, that should be known, and already in that region lacks any type of real, like, Black history. Like, you know, taking her and adding that element into all these other things. I think it just kind of, again, in some odd ways, is coming together as it should. And like, it's fun to like see how these things are connecting when I didn't know that they would connect, and everything meshes in this way. It's added another layer to the work that I'm making now. And so now I feel like I have this spirit, or this sense of Calvia, who is just like this woman in charge of these other very independent, skilled, you know, Amazonian, like, you know, it's just this power in it all that like carries with me, and I feel like I'm carrying on in different ways. So I don't even know what to say. It's just kind of like this very interesting way how all these things align without you. Like, I couldn't have planned it to be this way. It just all kind of fell into place, and just like kind of reflecting on all of it is really cool to see. Like, I could never have planned any of this to be this way. It just really just like divinely aligned.
I mean, it's almost that notion of like the ancestors wanting you to tell that story, or bringing that story back up, but it's also talking about like the erasure of like Afro-Cubano people too as well, that exists, Afro-Spanish people, and so like bringing that lens back into the realm in which it deserves. And you're right, like the erasure of Black history within, you know, California, but then also the America in itself, and making sure we're highlighting those stories. Like, even like talking about this thing with Disney, it reminded me of the John Henry story that was a part of Disney did a whole thing on John Henry that like it's nowhere, you can't even find it anymore. So like again, like that's in line with the things that they do. And so it's I really appreciate of you taking that moment and that opportunity to then bring light to other issues, and talking about the erasure of Black women within American society and stuff to that. I think that's very, very commendable. So now I think that kind of translates us into this new story that you're starting to as well. So can you talk a little bit about this new exhibition that you got going on?
Yeah, like I said before, it kind of also falls in line with Black women and us who, you know, set the standards, break barriers, and so on. But even more intimately, how it's driving me, or how I'm trying to like grab onto that magic and kind of use it to shine my own gift. Because like, you know, I mean, we know that we're capable of these things, but sometimes we feel very much into living life and the, you know, just the everyday things that we get caught up in, and the feelings of like, you know, is this even going to work out, the worries and all that stuff. And so sometimes you lose that magic and you lose that drive, and you have to be reminded of like your purpose and why you've gotten to this point and how you should keep going. And I feel like this is taking a more intimate look at like my own struggles, and kind of at times maintaining that, or grabbing on and letting it carry me, because I'm too stuck in my own insecurities and just worries and the weight of the world in itself, that it's hard to think that I can, you know, be a change and be a means when I feel so weighed down by all these other things that are either systemically keeping me down or just my own, kind of emotional, whatever you kind of want to say, like, we all have those things, like we're in depressive situations or things are just not working and we're not mentally in a state for us to be like, get up and do these things and just paint and make stuff and just, it's just kind of like I'm really much in this human experience and in my emotions and, sometimes things don't work out how you want them to, you're not in the way to think, but still trying to, tap into that magic, to the ancestors, to listening, to the intuition, because that's real, and that gut feeling and those things that, you're hearing yourself, mind, just like that, the voice that you need to like really pay attention to and get up and do. So I think what's going to be in this exhibition is going to be a lot of that and a lot of like me being a part of that and talking about this still running spirit that's still very much connected to like Calafia and so on and so forth, and how also me traveling as of recently has been something that's kind of been a manifestation of like taking hold of that spirit and running with it. And so far I'm really liking where this is going, and I want to see like how much more momentum I can take with this running woman, this Black that represents Black women, breaking barriers, setting standards, and doing all amazing things that Black women do.
That's incredible. Can you tell everybody the title of the
the title of the show is what you don't have in your head, you gotta have in your feet.
Again, told you off camera, but still a great, incredible title. I love those little nuggets that people can just hold on to. One thing I did want to bring up is this notion of like when we were kind of going to talk about like the conversation that we had before we got here, was talking about this narrative, right, that you're trying to keep through this work. Do you consider this exhibition a chapter, or is this just like a portion of that narrative?
I like how you said that. I would definitely consider it a chapter. Yeah, I think that perfectly sums it up, because it's definitely not the end. It's just like the first installment of many other chapters that will be a part of this like ongoing narrative for sure. And I'm interested to see how it's going to evolve.
So do you see your exhibitions going forth as like different chapters, and so like is that kind of how you see it, and how, well, I guess you don't know how many different exhibitions will there be.
I mean, really, yeah. I'm like, I can sit here and I can like make these assumptions, like, yeah, I can see this, I can see that, but it's pretty much all going to change. That's kind of just the way it works. Because I mean, I can have ideas, but they always end up changing somehow, whether it's voluntary or not. Something about it shifts, and then I just have to work with that change, whatever it is, and whatever it is, it always ends up working out. So I mean, that's why I'm like, I'm excited to see how it's going to evolve, because at this point I really can't speak to it, but yeah, I think it's definitely going to be cool, whatever it is, because I feel like from now moving on, I'm just going to continue to push myself and challenge myself to use different ways of presenting different aspects of these chapters that you're talking about, incorporating different materials. And although I'm like very comfortable in what I use now, I'm always interested in adding more different skill sets under my belt. And I'm not shy to consider sculpture and consider like installation and things of that nature to really create a space and this world that I'm talking about, that this narrative is happening in.
So beautiful. Okay, so we got like, apparently, like I knew this would go fast, as it always does. But the last question I'm gonna ask you, because I think there's a lot of people who could be listening or who will see this video later. I want to ask you if you have any words of encouragement or any tips or advice that you could give somebody about living in their truth? Because I mean, like through your work, but then also talking to you before we get on camera, it seems like you are living in your truth. But we also talked about the pitfalls of choosing to live in your truth. And so I would love to see if you have any words of encouragement that you could possibly give anybody about that experience.
Ooh. I mean, I feel like I'm laughing now because I kind of feel like, you know, in Sister Act when Garberg tells Lauryn Hill, like, you know what, if you wake up and the first thing you think about is singing and that's all you think about, then you're supposed to be a singer, girl. Like, I was like a little bit of that kind of, like, but really though, if you wake up and the first thing you want to do is, you know, paint and do that, and that's what you want to do, that's what your heart, like, that's what pulls you, like, on a Friday night, if that's what you want to do, like, that's really where your heart is telling you, and that's what you want to focus your time and energy into, then run with that, because there's something there. Like this, I feel like that urge in you is not just, you know, it's something that shouldn't be ignored. And I feel like that's something that if you dedicate time to, you can really cultivate, you can grow. And I feel like if you know, I'm not like, because I wasn't always as good as I am now, and I feel like I'm only gonna get better because I am a practicing artist, and the more you practice, the better you get. And so I feel like if right now you're not, because you know you're not like in a museum or something right now, doesn't mean that's not where you can be. I wasn't in a museum before. I never thought I could be in a museum. I thought that was like a dream that I could never, that would be, it was so far away. Like, what? That's so, I would want that, but I could never have seen myself getting it. Now I'm in a museum, and it's like, what? I'm in a museum. And it's because like I stuck with it. I wanted to perfect my craft. I wanted to be the best, and I continue. I still want to perfect it. There's always still room for improvement. I just keep practicing, and then you'll gain more skills. You'll find your voice, and you'll find the style, and everything will come together. But it's not going to come together like automatically as soon as you pick up a pencil or whatever medium you do. It takes time, because like I said, practice makes perfect. Practice like helps in the evolution of your work, and you getting stronger and better, and you know your challenges get bigger, and then everyone sees this growth in you. But I also want to say, closed mouths don't get fed. I always say that, because and at the end of all of this, like when you are in this art world and you start doing things, you need to be very vocal about your needs and what serves you and what's best for you in long term. Because I feel like, you know, when you're first coming into it, you want to do everything, but not everything really serves you in the way that it should and is best for you in long term. But you need to be able to ask for what you want and need to make it work, because they're not paying people as they should out here. They're not considering your needs outside of, you know, just monetary payment, just, you know, whether it be supplies, whether it be like any type of emotional needs, time, your time is valuable. All these things are to be taken into consideration when you're working business with businesses and with people in business. You always have to, you know, be mindful of all your needs. And if you want something, ask for it. Because if you don't, they're not going to give it to you. They're not considering you. You are your biggest advocate. And in that, you need to be vocal in what's going to suit you and take you the furthest.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful way of ending this. Firstly, I want to thank you again for joining and being a part of this. Like it truly means a lot.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. It has. This whole interview has been awesome.
No, I knew it was gonna be good, but like sometimes you always get nervous about these things.
I know, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Like sometimes, a lot of times when I do interviews, it very much feels like an interview. But this is the whole time it's felt like a conversation, and I appreciate all those who tuned in to listen and watch. But like, yeah, this is the type of conversation that I like to have. It's like really a conversation.
Well, see, that's what more than moms. That's all I wanted it to be.
Exactly. You did it. You're doing it.
Yes.
Congratulations. No, you doing it. You doing it. It's here.
No. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. This is a wonderful conversation with Erin LeAnn Mitchell.